It's the Karen Swift story, the woman last seen alive at a Halloween party, and was a second woman also in danger. An all-new 2020 starts right now.
It was a really big deal. This beautiful blonde-headed lady comes up missing after a Halloween party.
It was just supposed to be a fun night out, adults only.
What's the overall view of this young mom who suddenly goes missing?
People liked Karen, they liked being around her.
Tonight, the shocking trial and the ex-wife you'll only see on 2020.
This is a man I was married to that I shouldn't have been afraid of.
But what about his first wife?
My mom was going out more, which made me start to question why.
When they found Karen's vehicle, it had a badly damaged flat tire.
It appears that this screw was mainly inserted into the tire.
It was literally screwed into the tire. So this is where you found the smashed cell phones?
In this area here.
Not one, but two smashed phones.
I thought maybe somebody saw her walking and grabbed her.
She doesn't hold back. I can see Karen going over there and letting him have it.
This case is wild, to put it mildly. It's wild because the circumstances are just so unique.
Karen Swift's Halloween costume was a very sexy black costume.
Black skirt, black tights, black shoes, and she had a black, kind of a Mardi Gras type mask that she was wearing.
I think she was supposed to be a cat. She had a skirt on. It was very form-fitting.
So it was va-va-voom.
It was.
What began as an innocent night of Halloween partying was just the beginning of a tragic story that would engulf not only Karen Swift, but her whole family and almost everyone in this close-knit community.
There was going to be a costume party on October 29th, 2011. It was held at a place that here in Dyersburg it's called The Farms. It's a country club that's attached to the golf course.
Dyersburg, Tennessee is just a small hamlet in western Tennessee. It's not far from the Mississippi River.
Dyersburg is a small, very closely knit town. Everybody pretty much knows everybody.
I think the majority of the population still has that old Southern hospitality kind of greet everybody, wave, somebody when you're driving down the road, you wave to them.
There's only 38,000 people here. Most people have grown up here, lived here their whole lives.
And I think that you take the word of mouth and you add the social media aspect to it now, and everyone is almost always in everyone else's business.
44-year-old Karen Swift marries husband David in 1989. Originally from Arkansas, they moved to Dyersburg, Tennessee with their family about 2 decades later in 2008.
When I first moved to Tennessee, I really liked it. I enjoyed it. It was very peaceful, and getting to know all my new friends and, meet new people was fun.
They didn't know anyone in Dyer County, and they made the move here, apparently for the schools. There are some good schools in this area.
Together, David and Karen Swift had 4 kids, 2 boys and 2 younger girls, including their daughter Ashley.
Growing up, my mom was very involved. She loved taking us to sports, dance, cheer. She just had that very caring and nurturing personality.
She was just a wonderful mother. She would do anything for her children. They were number one in her life. They came before anything else.
Karen was always kind of a fun-loving, bubbly type of personality. Tried to, even when things were not going particularly well, tried to keep a positive attitude.
Her friends really liked her.
And she had a lot of friends, so she was someone who was beautiful, someone who appeared to be happy with her life, and things appeared to be going very well for her.
Karen was outgoing, gregarious. She made friends very easily. People liked Karen. They liked being around her.
And on this cool, clear October night, Karen was headed out with her friends, while her daughter Ashley, who was 9 at the time, was heading to a sleepover at her friend's house.
I remember I was staying at a friend's house, and my mom was going to a Halloween party with some of her friends, and my dad was going to stay home with my sister.
Karen Swift went to the Halloween party with Bill Bona and Kathy Bona.
The party was hosted by 15 to 20 different couples. The women kind of did all the decorations, put everything together. The guys just kind of showed up.
And it was just supposed to be a fun night out. Adults only, dress up, have fun in a costume, and just socialize with one another. Karen arrived at the Halloween party probably around 8 or a little after 8 p.m.
That night, Karen was in a pretty good mood. I mean, she was able to go out on the dance floor and talk to different people. People were drinking, having a good time. Music was playing. People were out dancing. Karen was walking around talking to several people. I remember seeing her on the dance floor at least one time.
And she left with Bill and Kathy Bona probably around midnight that night. And they went to McDonald's to get some French fries.
So they went through the McDonald's drive-thru and then went home to Kathy and Bill Bona's house.
While they're at Bill and Kathy's house, she gets a call from her daughter, Ashley.
When we were starting to go to bed, I decided that I wanted to go home. I called my mom and asked her to come get me.
Karen immediately told Kathy, I've got to go, my baby's sick, I'm going to go pick her up. So she did. She left, she went and picked up her daughter at a friend's house, and then went home.
By now, of course, it's around 1:30 in the morning, the next day, October 30th. On her way home, Karen texts her husband, David, to let him know she's heading back to their house.
When she told him about going to pick up Ashley, he sent her a text response about the garage doors closed, come in the side door.
And then they arrived back at the Swift home around 2 a.m. that morning.
Karen goes to sleep downstairs, while her husband David is sleeping in a different bedroom upstairs.
David did not get up until the next morning around 10 or 10:30 when the girls woke him up.
It's now that the Swift family's entire world turns upside down.
The next morning, Karen was not at home. The girls were the first ones, according to David, to tell him that their mother was missing.
Remember, Karen and Ashley had returned home around 2 in the morning and went to sleep. But now it seems that sometime after that, Karen had somehow disappeared.
Between the time of probably 10 and 11 o'clock, Kathy Bona, her friend, had been trying to call her. David Swift, her husband, had been trying to call her. And so now people are starting to get seriously worried that something's happened to her.
After Bill and Kathy Bona didn't get a response from her, they kind of said, well, something's not right. So they called David and asked him, where is Karen? And then they called the sheriff's office and said that she was missing.
Shortly after that, David made a phone call to the sheriff's department and reported that his wife was missing.
Karen's disappearance quickly became a mystery, and it would begin with the discovery of her abandoned car, a key piece of evidence that transforms this from a missing persons case into something far more sinister.
So she shows up missing. There was a lot of different theories about what was going on. There were many clouds of suspicion. It was a really big deal. This beautiful blonde-headed lady, mother of 4, comes up missing after a Halloween party. Everybody was talking about it.
The morning of Karen's disappearance, her car is discovered less than a half-mile away from her home.
At the corner of Millsfield Highway and Harness in Dyer County is where the broken-down SUV of 44-year-old Karen Swift was found.
I saw the car sit there for a day or so.
Karen's gone, and that's what's important, and we just want her to come back.
You could walk to it. It wasn't that far away on the highway, and it was there with a flat tire. So that's a clue. Her car's there.
Karen's vehicle was on the side of the road on Millsfield Highway right next to Harness Road. That's the road that Karen had lived on. Karen was not there.
It was in a normal state. It was parked on the side of the road. It had a flat tire to the right side. And the investigation revealed that it was a screw in the tire.
Why would her car be up there? If she had come home, there was no one who said Karen walked home from up on the highway. So it would appear that Karen had left. But it wasn't very far for her to suddenly get a flat tire either.
Investigators believe that the tire had been manually deflated and that the screw had been intentionally inserted into the tire. Which begs the question, did somebody put it there on purpose to leave Karen stranded?
When we observed the car, we noticed a screw in the tire.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at this very closely, it appears that this screw was manually inserted into the tire.
It was literally screwed into the tire.
Literally screwed into the tire. And my theory was right once we sent it off for forensic analysis. It was mainly placed in that tire.
And I wanted you to show me this screw. This is one that you actually ran over.
This is a screw I actually ran over in my patrol unit that went all the way up in the tire. And you can see where it was on the road.
Yeah. A lot of friction.
A lot of friction. This screw has no friction.
The lack of friction making investigators believe the screw hadn't been driven on. But how could that be?
They had not been in Dyer County that long because they had moved there. Karen's from Pocahontas, Arkansas, which is about 2 hours from Dyersburg. And it was about 4 years later that she disappeared.
The Swifts seemed to have a great life in Pocahontas. They were young and in love and devoted parents, as their friend Holly Sutton tells us.
We met through just public school and ended up being fast friends. They were excellent parents. They had rules. They were fairly strict. They did everything with their children.
We moved ultimately for my dad's job to Tennessee. It was just a better opportunity. I enjoyed it. It was very peaceful. I do think she was happy. I think that she wasn't necessarily fully herself in Tennessee.
Karen wasn't acting like herself, and turns out there was a reason for it. Strains on their marriage, David's new job as a manager at a manufacturing plant, and Karen's apparent change in lifestyle in Dyersburg worried those closest to her.
She had just mentioned to me that it was very different. She just said that, she says, I don't know that you would like it here. But she did say that she was meeting people and getting out.
I was used to her tucking me into bed every night or being home every night, getting up with her and going to the gym, and that kind of slowly stopped the longer that we lived in Tennessee.
That was not their lifestyle in Pocahontas. They didn't even social drink. We didn't need that. It was hard to hear because that was not them.
As soon as she went missing, it was Chief McCright's supposition that David, at the very least, had something to do with it.
And we finally just decided that, hey, he's going to be the only person that can really help us in this case to tell us about where his wife might have gone.
If you have a seat for me right over there.
He came in and gave my guys an interview. That interview didn't go very well, we didn't think.
And I said, so are you going to a costume party or what are you doing? Are you all having a party? And she said, no, I'm just going to Kathy's. I said, well, okay.
He really wasn't concerned to me about where she might have gone.
Okay. Was there any kind of argument or anything then?
No. I just, it was very brief. I wanted to make sure that Ashley was okay and that she was okay, because I questioned Karen about driving and getting her. I said, if you can't drive, I wouldn't get Ashley. And that was all the conversation was.
Okay. How close did you get to her? Could you tell whether she'd been drinking or not?
Oh, yeah, you could tell. I could always smell she was drinking,
And he was saying, that she drank and she was pretty much an alcoholic.
Both drunk and been drinking, and She was so drunk once that she was had passed out. He was just so drunk that Sharon was drinking so much that.
So that was just, I should, as a husband, be concerned about where is my wife.
If you had to use an estimated guess right now, where do you think she is?
I don't know. I'm so worried about her.
I would say my dad's reaction was, he was obviously very worried, but you have to think I was 9 and my sister was 5, so I think he was trying to put on a very brave face for us.
As the search for Karen Swift continues, investigators are reminded of a horrible incident Karen had with a neighbor just months before.
There was an issue where John Hogshooter had poisoned a couple of dogs in the neighborhood. One of the dogs belonged to David and Karen Swift.
Anybody who has a dog and they say their neighbor poisoned their dog, that would certainly be bad blood.
She doesn't hold back. If she feels that she's got something to say, she's going to say it.
A suspect emerges for investigators. As the search for Karen Swift continues, investigators cast a wide net for suspects and leads.
There was a man that she had met at a concert about 20 miles from Dyersburg across the Mississippi River.
It never grew into a full romantic relationship. It was more of an acquaintance. I think they talked on the phone a few times, maybe sent text messages back a few times, but it never developed any further than that.
His last text to Karen was, she told him that she was at the Halloween party, hanging out with some friends. And his last text was something essentially, great, text me sometime, I'd love to take you out to dinner. And we quickly concluded that, obviously it didn't sound like somebody who was obsessed, and he was ruled out as a suspect.
Found out where he was at the time of her disappearance, and that alibi checked out.
But investigators have another possible lead to follow as they learn of a terrible conflict between Karen Swift and one of her neighbors.
John Hogshooter lived across the road, diagonal from their residence.
Catty-cornered, probably not more than 150 feet from their home.
Mr. Hogshooter had previously had a criminal matter charged against him regarding some sort of issue with one of their dogs.
He had gained some notoriety in the neighborhood. He's kind of a rough around the edges fella, generally.
There was an issue where John Hogshooter had poisoned a couple of dogs in the neighborhood, and one of the dogs belonged to David and Karen Swift.
He put some poison, some sort of poison concoction out on his property. One of the Swift's dogs got into the poison and was also sickened. The Swift's dogs did not die.
On October 7th, Karen actually went to this man's house to confront him about her dog being poisoned. John was eventually charged with animal cruelty in that case, and he actually pleaded guilty.
While one neighborhood dog did die from the poisoning, the Swift dog managed to survive after being rushed to the vet and having its stomach pumped, the incident creating bad blood between the neighbors.
Anybody who owns a dog and they say their neighbor poisoned their dog, that would certainly be bad blood.
I know Karen and the Hogshooter guy, I knew of the fight they had.
She doesn't hold back. She doesn't hold back. Like, if she feels that she's got something to say, she's going to say it.
When she was missing, he became one of the first suspects that the sheriff's department looked at.
Investigators want to talk to John Hogshooter. He'd been poisoning neighborhood dogs, including Karen's. They bring him into this interrogation room, and they have some questions to ask.
Gentlemen, I want to talk to you about, I'm going to just shoot straight from the hip. Are you aware of what's going on out there where you live?
Yeah, I'm well aware of what's going on out there.
What I'm trying to do is clear people. And I know that the incident that happened with the dogs out there, I know all, about that because of the prior investigator that had been working that case. What I'm trying to do is find out your whereabouts on the 30th one, that Saturday. We interviewed John and asked him that he, of course, we've been beat about the dogs, but we wanted to know, did he know Karen?
His memories of Karen Swift differs from what others have said about the tension between the two of them.
What we want to do is make sure you had no involvement in Karen's disappearance.
I don't know. The only way I even seen a picture of this lady is my wife showed me a picture of her. I was like, oh, is that what she looks like? The only other time I've ever seen her is out mowing her grass in the summertime from my house.
Had he ever had any contact with Karen? Had he spoken with her? What kind of involvement had he ever had with Karen or David or anybody else in that neighborhood?
I go up there and talk to him and sit out on the porch. From that area, from my house or his house, is the only time I've ever seen that lady. Out there mowing the yard, she's in a bikini. What do you think? Everybody's gonna be. Like,
right, I understand.
We're men,
You're a man, you're gonna look at her, ain't you?
Yeah, but just like, yeah, she's in a bikini up there, and that's it. And that's the only time I've ever seen her.
And he said no. He just saw her at one time out in the yard, and like a neighbor waved or something to the nature of that. When did you find out that this woman was missing? When did you know about it?
I would say probably somewhere in the middle of the week.
This past week?
Yeah. Or whenever she came up missing, probably in the middle of the week.
Somebody tell you, or you see it on the news, or?
How did I find out? Maybe it might. Well, I don't have TV, so I don't watch TV, so I don't know how I found out. My wife may have told me, or I don't remember. Things because I honestly don't know.
As soon as they started talking to him, he was extremely cooperative.
Where is my truck?
It's locked up and impounded in an enclosed building.
They impounded his vehicle. They got a search warrant, searched his house.
What I'm trying to say, if we want to look at your house, I'd rather for you not to go home before we got there. That's what I'm saying.
Well, my clothes and stuff, I washed my clothes over at my daughter's house, so all my clothes, I'll probably go over there and take a shower and get my clothes for sure. I can't even get in because my keys in the truck. There's a gold key in where the ashtray thing goes right there. There's a gold key. That's the only way I can get in and get my clothes to.
Okay. He's very relaxed. He wasn't tense about it. It was obvious that, he wasn't nervous. I thought it was a good interview.
There was no evidence in the end that pointed that John Hogshuter had any knowledge of this at all.
But then investigators find Karen Swift's 2 cell phones, almost totally destroyed, near the property of John Hogshuter.
Finding these 2 phones very close to John's property was very concerning for the police.
When we discovered the phones, they were damaged. They were crushed. Somebody might have stomped them and then pitched them there.
So you've got the investigators. They don't know where Karen Swift is. They know she's missing. Her phone was not in her car. They didn't see it around the car, so they start searching for the phone.
So we decided we were going to do a grid from where her car was found back to the house.
So this is where you found the smashed cell phones?
In this area here, the phones were found.
Yeah.
They found 580-something feet from their driveway, from Karen's driveway to this location.
A highway patrolman comes across not 1, but 2 smashed phones.
This is images of them, right? They were shattered.
That phone was shattered before it even went there. Because if you had thrown it in that grass, you would never got this damage to this phone.
But as close to the Swifts' home as the phones are, they're also very close to John Hogshuter's home. That neighbor, the Swifts say they had a confrontation with.
Finding those 2 phones within proximity of John Hogshuter's house raises many, many questions for investigators in this case, for obvious reasons.
Investigators found out that Hog Shooter was at this church event.
We knew where he was on her day of disappearance, and we were able to establish his alibi.
There was no evidence in the end that pointed that John Hogshuter had any knowledge of this at all.
A thorough investigation was done, and he had alibi witnesses, and we were able to pretty quickly eliminate him as a suspect.
With Hogshuter cleared, the investigation continues. At this point, the most important unanswered question, where is Karen?
Some people just walk away from their lives. It happens all the time. Without a body, they don't know that a crime's been committed.
We constantly relied on getting them to the media. Of course, the sheriff would make press releases, social media. Everybody knew that we were trying to locate her.
There's a landmark in Dyer County, and it's a large cross where you can see it from a good distance. And near that, within a few hundred feet, is a cemetery.
Bledsoe Cemetery is very spread out. Some of the headstones there are over 100 years old, and even older. It's a very rural area. A local pastor and a congregant were in Bledsoe Cemetery on December 10th examining overturned headstones. And as they're surveying this type of damage, they notice a human body part coming out of some kudzu bushes.
Karen Swift has been missing for 6 weeks at this point. The police arrive and head to this nearby area full of kudzu.
Kudzu, they're vines, and kudzu can cover everything. It can cover very large trees and hang down. Kudzu can cover everything that it crawls across, and it crawls across almost everything.
And this is the kudzu that was...
This is the kudzu area. And all of this was in kudzu. Every bit of this was in kudzu.
So it was hiding everything here?
Yes, and the body was found somewhere in this area, maybe near that tree stump.
The body was so badly decomposed it was hard to tell how long it had been there. One thing was very clear, though. There was almost no way that this person just wandered off and somehow found themselves underneath these bushes and then somehow died.
They certainly have an indication that it's a female, but they're not positive that it's Karen Swift.
The body was found with just undergarments on.
Yes.
What does that tell you?
Well, it lets me know that she did not leave the house dressed like that.
The body is sent to the medical examiner, and dental records make the identification official. It is indeed Karen Swift.
We went to the home to make the death notification. And we told David that we had found Karen. And his very words were, "You found it." You know, and we all, like, we found your wife, Karen. You found it.
I don't have any audio or statement that backs that up, but I don't know that that statement proves anything. I know that the officer was trying to make something of that, but it's, in my opinion, not an admission or anything other than you found it.
The 44-year-old's body was found near Bledsoe Cemetery, just 2 miles from her Dyer County home. Police identified Swift's body Sunday using dental records. They're not saying how she was murdered. No suspects have been named.
Maybe it was just my dad who sat me down and told me that they found my mom, but I remember my dad being kind of very calm. He explained it in a way of mom's not coming back home, and this is a new reality. And I think that he was trying to say it in the best way possible, but there's not really a best way possible to say that.
It was one of those days where you just go numb and you just cannot believe that this is what it came to. And why?
I was very upset when her body was found because of the kids and also David. And he was wondering what in the world could have happened.
I thought maybe, maybe somebody saw her walking and, grabbed her or things like that. But the more I thought about it, I thought there had to be a little bit more to it.
The autopsy revealed that the cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. One thing that we were not able to tell was whether there was strangulation involved.
Investigators may not be certain how, but they are now convinced Karen Swift was murdered. As they try to figure out who did it, what did they find under a spare tire? As investigators in Dyersburg look into what is now a murder case, they learn some messy details about Karen and David Swift's marriage. Remember, they had moved here to Tennessee from Pocahontas, Arkansas.
Karen and David met in Pocahontas. They got married in 1989. Karen and David had what could be best described as a tumultuous marriage.
I know that maybe there was some affairs going on in Arkansas.
He ended up having a marital affair with this lady, and a child was born as a result of that affair. And they divorced at that time.
For a lot of couples, that might have been the end. But David and Karen are able to reconcile. They're divorced for only about 7 months when they remarry in 2000 and continue raising their 2 sons together.
And so then David and Karen go on and have their daughters Ashley and Keely. Now, sometime in the mid-2000s, Karen has an affair. David finds out. He forgives her for this. They reportedly move on.
He decided to quickly move the family to Dyersburg.
So it's David and Karen living in the new house with 3 of their 4 younger children. The oldest son was now in college.
He felt like if they didn't get away from the problem they were having in Arkansas, their marriage would never work. And it did, I mean, they had alone for quite some time, and then things went from bad to worse.
That's because once the couple moves from Arkansas to Tennessee, more problems spring up. Karen makes new friends, and David and Karen have very different views about what happened next.
It didn't seem like David was happy with those friends, and they weren't especially happy with David either.
It was clear that once she started this friendship with these new friends, that she was moving away from David.
It was midnight. I heard her sneaking out of the house.
He talked about it in that police interview.
I've seen nights that she would speed down the drive and Ashley's chasing after her and stuff, not wanting her to leave and go out at night.
It did get to a point where I feel like there was a little bit of shift in my family, and my mom was going out more, which made me start to question why.
As investigators learn details about what was going on, questions are raised about the nature of David's behavior towards Karen and if his alleged behavior crossed a line.
When David got upset is when Karen would be absent from the house.
He wanted to know where she was.
He would wake up, she would be gone, and he would get out to see where she was at.
David might be following her, but to him, it made perfect sense. He told people he had reason to worry about her and their kids, and his attorney says he thought she might be cheating on him.
If it's late at night and your kids are in bed and you're home after a work day, you might understand why somebody would say, hey, what's going on? Or can I ask you some questions?
I think David just wanted his wife to be at home where she should be with him and the kids. She claimed it was controlling. I don't think so.
But Karen let it be known she had had enough. She wanted another divorce.
Karen wanted to file for divorce because she felt David was too controlling of her,
Frankly, if we had to go to court, the inappropriate marital conduct would have been what I would refer to as kind of a stalkish behavior.
But Karen doesn't have enough money of her own to file for divorce, so her good friends, Bill and Kathy Bona, loan her the cash. Not only that, the Bonas say they gave Karen a second phone to use to get around her husband, to talk to her divorce lawyer.
Karen told me that she had a secondary phone, that the number that she was talking to me on was a secondary phone, and she did not want him to know that she was calling and talking to me about a potential divorce.
Investigators understand why they found those two smashed and discarded phones.
She was afraid to be present when he was served. It was a substantial amount of money that she was asking for, so I think that had a big impact on David when he received that.
And in the meantime, the couple continues to live together in the same house.
She was living downstairs, and David was sleeping upstairs.
I didn't notice anything different, you know. We all went about our business.
She chose to live in the home. And my take on it was that she wasn't afraid of him. She didn't ask for order or protection because there had been no issues of physical violence.
David continued to say things to Karen wanting to call the divorce off.
He wasn't happy about the divorce.
To prosecutors, the possible divorce and the issues in the marriage are reaching a boiling point.
I believe that he had the attitude they had reconciled before or had problems before, and perhaps they could just talk through it and continue on with their life.
And he said she wasn't having it. He said there was just no way.
Was it enough of a motive for murder? Investigators had some evidence, including those smashed cell phones found here. And there were those divorce papers that David seemed to have hidden under the spare tire in his car.
This here is not adding up, because if I'm getting a divorce, why do I need to hide them in a car, in the trunk, under a spare tire?
I don't have an explanation if he had just stuck them there or if he had inadvertently set them there.
It was only 20 days after she filed for divorce that Karen went missing.
To investigators, it's a lot of smoke. But the truth is, there is simply no hard evidence linking David Swift to the crime. And the district attorney general in office at the time is not willing to charge him.
I think he was concerned that you only get one chance to try the case.
For more than a decade, the town wonders, is there a killer walking free? Then, in 2022, finally, an arrest. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. And I got a chance to talk to that man from behind bars. Did you ever feel like you had a cloud of suspicion over you? Am I talking with the killer? And another woman emerges with a harrowing account. How would what she says affect the Karen Swift case?
The night that Karen was last seen, she went to a Halloween party.
I mean, the body was here for a month.
Undetected.
They investigated and they investigated, and everyone was like, when are you going to find a suspect?
The story of the same man, but two different women. One of them killed, one of them claiming she was stalked.
And there he was, in my backyard, in the middle of the night. This is too much.
The exclusive interview you'll only see on 2020.
They told me that my dad got arrested, and in that moment I was like, for what?
How big a deal was this trial in Dyersburg?
This trial was huge.
They didn't compare the fingerprints. They had tunnel vision.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
This is a man I was married to that I shouldn't have been afraid of. And why is this happening?
Today we've intensified our search. We have combed through the areas again.
Karen Swift is a 44-year-old housewife, mother of 4 in Dyersburg, Tennessee, and she disappears in October 2011. Her car turns up not far from her house.
Car was locked, secured. There was no signs of foul play in the vehicle.
It was puzzling. I really didn't know. I didn't know what to think.
So after Karen goes missing, the police talk to her husband, David.
I just ordered to come home.
And they learn that there are serious problems in the Swift marriage.
Well, have you filed for divorce?
She filed on the 5th.
6 weeks after she disappears.
The body was found somewhere in this area, maybe near that tree stump.
Karen Swift has been found. Police identified Swift's body using dental records.
For the Dyer County Sheriff's Office, this case turns into a murder investigation. But they don't have enough evidence against Karen Swift's husband, David, or anyone else for that matter, to make an arrest. For more than a decade, there seems to be a question that lingers in the air in this town. Will Karen Swift ever get justice?
When it didn't happen right away, it almost felt like that there was nobody trying.
Somebody did this, so who? I'm 100% sure David did not do this.
And we kept working this case. We never gave up on it. And there was always little bits and pieces that we could piece and put together.
David, anytime law enforcement or the DA's office reached out to him, he answered their questions. He cooperated because he wanted to find out what happened to his wife.
They investigated and they investigated, and everyone was like, when are you going to find a suspect? When are you going to charge someone?
So for 10 years, 11 years, it was the hot topic in town.
It became an election year issue about no swift justice.
And a lot of people were upset about Karen's case not being solved. It was always the number one thing that came up.
And in 2018, promising to look at the case again, Danny Goodman is elected as the new District Attorney General. Later, the sheriff hands the entire case file over to him.
And we, of course, had a regular caseload. It wasn't something that we could just drop our normal caseload and start going through.
By then, David Swift has left town. He has a whole new life and a new wife, Kelly Essman.
Single Christians, good news. At ChristianMingle.com.
I met David on Christian Mingle in January of 2014, and we dated for about 2.5 years, and then he moved to Alabama when we got married.
My relationship with my dad during this time period was very good. He made sure that we still had as normal as a childhood as we could, even into our teenage years, you know.
He did start telling me a little bit about Karen and the fact that she had come up missing. He actually asked me to run a background check on him, and the background check comes up clean. You know, none of the news stories showed that he was a person of interest. They didn't say that he was a suspect. It was okay.
I think they had a wonderful relationship. Everybody got along.
It may have started out that way, but Kelly says cracks started to form in the marriage over parenting issues. And she says David never wanted to discuss her concerns. Over the years, she says it grew worse and worse.
There were challenges, and with all blended families, there are, you know, and that's where it started going downhill. We both went to therapy. So I finally just decided I can't go back. This is too much. He finally said that he would file for divorce.
But they have no idea that back in Dyersburg, there's been a break in the Karen Swift investigation, thanks to something completely unrelated, the COVID pandemic.
It was actually good for this case, because at that time we were not allowed to have in-person court. We were not allowed to have jury trials, so we had a lot of time that was just downtime in the office.
We were alone in the office for, I want to say it was around 6 weeks. Looked at every page that was compiled by the Sheriff's Department.
And that's how the case basically was rejuvenated, and we started back with a lot more detail looking into it.
We just basically came to the same conclusion that, yes, David Swift did it.
We noticed maybe that there were a few things that we would like to have to prosecute the case that were not there.
In particular, they say they want information stored on Karen Swift's cell phones, found smashed not far from her home. After a year of trying, experts can't recover that data, but prosecutors say they do come up with more digital evidence from David Swift's computer.
In the days and weeks after Karen vanished, they found that her husband had been visiting all of these multiple dating sites. Why is David looking at dating sites when she hasn't even been found?
David Swift's lawyer claims other people in the house may have been using that computer and accessing those sites. The prosecutors decide they have enough to take the case to a grand jury. David Swift is indicted.
We would never take a case to trial that we did not feel like we could be successful with prosecution. And at that point, we felt that we could.
An arrest has finally been made in the 2011 murder of Karen Swift.
David Swift was arrested today in Alabama, where he was living with his new wife.
David Swift is charged with premeditated first-degree murder.
He was shocked.
Swift is brought back to Tennessee, where he later pleads not guilty to first and second-degree murder and manslaughter. The sheriff posts on Facebook, "Today is a good day for law enforcement." David was always a suspect because all the evidence points to him.
Certainly it was enough evidence to take him into custody and bring it to trial.
Every rumor, every piece of information that came in, we followed up. No one else had a motive. No one else had the opportunity, and he had all of those things.
They told me that my dad got arrested, and in that moment I was like, for what?
What could they possibly have that they arrested him for? Something that happened so long ago.
I think they just wanted to make an arrest to say we got somebody because they were getting so much flack from people.
There was nothing groundbreaking, no scientific evidence or anything other than what was in the file. Now, I'm not saying that Danny Goodman or his office did anything unethical or improper, but sometimes when pressure is applied or pressure is present in a situation, decisions get made, and we just disagreed with his decision to charge David Swift.
I remember getting that first phone call from him after he was in the jail, and I remember his first words weren't, they weren't about him, they were about us, and that everything was going to be okay.
I spoke to David Swift in a jailhouse interview. David, because this is the moment to clear the record, did you kill your wife?
No, absolutely not. She wasn't afraid of me one bit. We never had no domestics, no violence.
Because of the pending criminal charges, Swift says he couldn't talk about the details of the case, but he denied any violence in the marriage. So you said no domestics, meaning you never hurt Karen?
Never.
Never raised a hand to her?
Never. And on no female, ever. And I sure wouldn't do it to my wife or the mother of my children. But, I loved her. And I still love, her today.
But before he goes on trial, accused of killing Karen, a truly shocking development. New details emerge about David Swift's alleged behavior with another woman. And he faces another criminal charge. Weeks after David Swift is arrested and charged with his wife Karen's murder, he's released after posting a $200,000 bond. But in a truly wild turn of events, Swift's legal troubles follow him home to Alabama, where he faces accusations of stalking, this time from his estranged second wife, Kelly Essman.
I was not afraid of David during the marriage. Towards the end of my marriage, I was not necessarily afraid of him. After I separated, there were periods of time when he would call me, asking me, where are you going? I would tell him Hobby Lobby or, just a Target or whatever. And he always seemed to be calling exactly when I would be going to that place.
After David's arrest, Kelly claims she found proof that she was being followed and filed for an emergency restraining order.
Kelly alleges that in the midst of all of this turmoil with David, that she came into some information that he actually had purchased a tracking device.
And right then I knew. That's how he knew where I was going. So I knew there's a tracking device somewhere on my car. And we did find the tracking device.
Kelly also claims in her motion that David started reaching out to her, sending repeated messages via text and email.
I repeatedly asked him to stop. It started with us trying to work out the details of the divorce, but it turned into a lot of random harassing emails on various topics.
Kelly files for that emergency restraining order, reporting that she was afraid for her safety, that she believes she may be in danger, and that David's stalking and harassment had become egregious. The judge made no findings on those claims, but the restraining order was granted.
I wanted him to leave me alone. That's all I wanted. Just leave me alone.
Even with this new wife that he had and got a divorce, his MO was the same, following her around there in Alabama.
Karen and her friends and family said that David often would follow Karen around, that he was monitoring where she was at, that David would call her.
He even told us he followed her to a local store and got into the back of the car.
As for Kelly, she filed a police report after she claimed David's alleged harassment continued. In coordination with Alabama authorities, investigators back in Tennessee check up on what David Swift has been doing.
When he was put on a bond, the judge allowed an ankle monitor to be put on him. That brought to light data showing that he had been to her house on several occasions and following her.
And the sergeant calls me, and I'm like, how's that possible? That he knew where I was going. And he said that we think he's got a tracking device on your car. And I'm like, again?
Police pour over Kelly's car looking for a tracking device. They don't find one, but Kelly says she does find something chilling on her security camera system, which 2020 was able to obtain.
I pulled up the feed from that night, and there he was, in my backyard. In the middle of the night. He had to drive 40 minutes one way to get to my house. And that one of the times he saw him at my house was in the middle of the night for an hour and a half. When I see the video, that's when I become very confused, fearful. And why is this happening? Why is he doing it? I didn't give him any reason to. This is a man I was married to. That I shouldn't have been afraid of.
David's charged with felony stalking in Alabama, and his bond in the Karen Johnson Swift murder case was revoked.
Things moved pretty quickly after that. After they got the indictment, they arrested David Swift. There are pictures of him getting in the car.
With his bond revoked, Swift is brought into custody and sent to Tennessee.
He's been charged with stalking down there. They're going to handle those charges once we dissolve this case here.
David Swift has yet to enter a plea to the stalking charge. His lawyer handling the case hasn't responded to 2020's request for comment. With Swift sitting in jail, attention turns back to his fast-approaching trial for Karen's murder. The case is big news in a small town. And both the prosecution and the defense are about to pull back the curtain on the Swifts' private lives.
Did anyone have no clothes on in the hot tub?
What exactly was going on at those hot tub parties? And what did they have to do with Karen's case?
A man accused of killing his wife more than a decade ago is back in Tennessee. We'll bring you inside of the courtroom as both sides prepare for trial.
News of David Swift's trial puts Dyersburg on the map in a way locals have never seen.
When there was finally an arrest in Karen's case, you had TV crews, newsprint media, all these people flooding in to Dyersburg.
How big a deal was this trial in Dyersburg?
This trial was huge. It was high profile. It's been the #1 trial of public interest in Dyersburg.
Interestingly, Karen Swift's murder trial doesn't take place here in Dyer County, Tennessee. Instead, a judge issues a change of venue, and David Swift is tried for murder 50 miles from here in Weakley County, Tennessee. As opening statements begin, the prosecution makes it clear that there is no smoking gun against David Swift.
You are not going to see fingerprint analysis. You're not going to see ballistic testing. We will, however, give you several pieces of a puzzle. And when we get through giving you all of those, we think that we're going to have a complete picture. We knew that a jury would want to see some type of weapon that was used for the murder. And it was just, we were never going to have that in this case.
But the prosecution lays out their theory that David Swift didn't actually need a weapon.
We submit that the defendant dragged her to the garage. Once inside the garage, the defendant stomped Karen on her head with such violence that it caved her skull in.
I was shocked when I heard that because I had not heard that before, and I'm like, okay, we'll see the evidence of that.
The autopsy showed that there was starburst fracturing on the left side, which indicated that her head was against something solid and then was struck from the other side. And our theory is that solid object was the concrete in the garage.
The defense counters that the investigators never found any evidence in the garage to back up this theory.
So you actually walked around the garage and looked at it when you first went out there with Mr. Swift?
Yes, sir.
All right. You didn't see any blood or smell of strong bleach, did you?
I did not.
The prosecution then switches gears to focus on Karen's abandoned car. Remember, investigators say that her tire appeared to have been deliberately punctured.
The flat tire, I think, is one of the more significant pieces of the puzzle in this case.
One thing I did observe was a screw that was in groove number 3. The screw was slightly below the tread surface.
And does that have any significance to you in your examination?
Yes. When a object punctures the tire in the tread area, it will actually rebound as it goes through the tire because of the elastic nature and the structure of the tire.
Could you imagine a situation where a screw entered the tire in service like this, where it ran over an object, perhaps a pebble or a stone, that could have forced the screw head beneath the tread surface?
Well, I wouldn't say it's impossible, but I would say extremely improbable.
It was their contention that the tire was intentionally deflated as a ruse to make people believe that Karen had actually suffered from a flat tire, and that's why her car was there, when in fact that was not the case.
But the defense brings in their own expert, who testifies that the screw could have accidentally punctured that tire.
There's other vehicles could kick up screws or nails. You know, say you're following a construction vehicle and some are on the back of the trailer and they bounce off and you just happen to be behind it. Who knows what angle it's going to strike your tire at as you're going down the roadway.
My expert actually did test on a light tire on a similar wheel and, tried to recreate that and explained it to the jury. And I think the jury has to decide which they believe.
The prosecution also calls Karen's friends, Bill and Kathy Bona, to the stand to testify about how they viewed Karen and David's relationship.
She finally started taking action when she started getting the confidence to say, I'm just done. I can't do this anymore. And the controlling and accusations, she was ready to be done with the marriage because she needed to get out.
The defense argues that Karen had full control of everything she did.
She did the behavior she wanted to, and that's just a reality. And as we move on closer to the time she got a divorce, she would come and go as she wished.
Prosecution asked the Bonas about Kathy's 40th birthday celebration, where they hosted an after party with a group of their friends, which included the use of their hot tub. The Bonas testified that this party led to a confrontation with David Swift.
How were people dressed?
Some people had swimsuits, a couple people did not.
When you say they did not, did they have anything on?
No.
They were nude.
Yes.
Do you know if Miss Swift was in the hot tub?
She was, yes. I mean, I don't remember specifically seeing her, but she enjoyed being in the hot tub when she came over, in the wintertime when it was cold, so I'm sure she was.
Was Mr. Swift present that night?
He wasn't at first, and he wasn't invited, and he wasn't welcome. Mr. Swift burst into the door, there and startled me, and I asked where Karen was.
What was his demeanor at that time?
He was agitated, I would say, but I would also say it really caught me off guard. I thought, I don't like this, and I went to get out of the chair to go, ask him to leave, basically, and he came down the stairs and left.
How did he appear when he came down, as far as his attitude and demeanor?
I mean, he came down the stairs and left abruptly and left through the door, quickly enough where I couldn't even really get a word in edgewise.
The prosecution plays David's full police interview in court, where he confirmed that he would sometimes follow Karen to the Bonas house.
Karen started sneaking out of the house, and she would go to be with Kathy and Bill.
And when you say go to be with them, what do you mean, go to party with them?
Go party and naked in the hot tub in the backyard.
There was a lot of information about the hot tub parties and all of that, so it kind of verified the rumors that were going around that something somewhat wild was going on.
And there is key testimony still ahead as one emotional witness makes waves.
Well, we can call you next witness. Ashley Swift.
And David's own daughter prepares to testify at her father's trial. What will she say when she takes the stand? Inside the Weakley County Courthouse, attorney Daniel Taylor dives into one of the most memorable cases of his career.
I've been a trial lawyer for 32 years, and it's the most media attention on any particular case that I've had. This is 2011. After all those years, there's been no scientific breakthrough or anything. There's been nothing new that's come in or anything. After all this time, there was a charge.
The defense contends that the reason David would follow Karen was because he was worried about what was going on at those hot tub parties.
There were issues about conduct and things that were going on, adult parties, things about hot tub parties, and just some things that maybe some others considered not appropriate.
They call her friend, Robin Alford, who testifies that she saw Karen passed out at Kathy Bona's birthday party.
Did you see Karen Swift leave the hot tub and go into the house?
I did. I witnessed her get up. She looked to me as if she was hot and woozy kind of feeling when I walked in, and I witnessed her laying on the floor.
Did you, were you aware whether or not when you first met the Swifts that they drank alcohol or not?
Karen never drank before she came to Dyersburg, never. And I don't think that she could handle her alcohol at all.
The defense points out that in his police interview, David did express concern for Karen's welfare.
I'd have to go get her and drive her home, they call me. And so I was always concerned and worried about her. There was Several times I found her in compromising situations. And I did get upset. I said, Karen, please, why are you doing this?
The defense was simple. David Swift did not kill Karen Swift. They said it could have been a random act by somebody who was just passing by, either in a car or on foot.
They didn't compare the fingerprints. They just tested David Swift. They had tunnel vision.
The defense also argues that David had a serious knee injury affecting his mobility, so he wouldn't have been physically able to dispose of Karen's body.
They said he had this injured leg, so he could not have possibly picked her up and placed her in the cemetery.
Did you notice anything about his leg or how he was walking?
He had a knee brace on, and he had crutches.
Multiple witnesses for the prosecution dispute the seriousness of David's knee injury.
Was he using crutches?
I've never seen no crutches on Saturday.
Did he appear to be injured in any way?
You could see him using his crutches while he was talking about it. After he got done talking and they went in the house, he just walked like he didn't need crutches anymore. I thought that was strange.
Even if he is faking it, it's still there's a visual there. The jury is repeatedly seeing people get on the stand and say, yes, I saw him on these crutches. Yes, I saw him on these crutches.
The defense also disagrees with the prosecution's account of what happened inside the Swift home on the night of Karen's murder.
So part of the prosecution's theory of the case was that David comes into Karen's room, takes Ashley, the daughter, out of the bed and goes and puts her in bed with the sister Keeley. He returns to the room and Karen is either asleep or in a very incapacitated state, and then something happens where he ends her life.
Then the defense calls an essential witness to challenge that theory.
Would you tell everybody your name?
Ashley Swift. I was nervous to go on the stand, and they decided to call me early. And so in that moment, I did freak out a little bit, just because I hadn't mentally prepared myself.
Ashley, who was only 9 years old when she saw her mom for the last time, describes what she remembers about the hours before Karen disappeared.
You're not used to testifying, so let me just ask you a few things, okay?
Okay.
When your mother picked you up, did she pick you up in her car?
She did.
And where did y'all go after that?
We went home, back to our house where my sister and my dad were.
And do you recall getting out of the car or going to the house? Do you recall everything about that night?
Yeah, we came into the house and we went to sleep in her bedroom. I didn't really prepare for trial. Whatever was asked was what was asked, and however I answered was however I answered, and I told the truth in everything that I said.
And Ashley testifies that it wasn't her father who moved her from the bed that fateful night.
Oh, I know it was my mother.
How do you know that?
It's instinct to know your mother versus somebody else. You have that bond with that person and you know who it is.
But you didn't actually see her.
No, but I felt her. There were some times during my testimony where they were trying to, I think, trick me into thinking that what I felt and knew was something else, and I made sure to own that. It was my testimony.
So you actually don't know for sure then, do you?
I mean, I have a pretty good instinct to feel what my mother feels like.
Seeing his oldest daughter take the stand becomes a visibly emotional ordeal for David.
I know that it was physically tough, and he knew it was difficult being asked questions.
And finally, after 2 weeks of heated exchanges and moving testimony, there are fireworks inside the jury room where lines are drawn in the sand.
It was divided pretty much down the middle.
It was basically the guys against the girls.
As the courtroom holds its breath for a verdict. After 6 days of emotionally charged testimony in David Swift's murder trial, it was time for the lawyers on both sides to make their final plea to the jury.
Karen and David Swift's marriage ended sometime around 3:30 a.m. on October 30th, 2011. Sadly, it didn't end the way Karen had envisioned it might when she filed for divorce earlier that month from David.
My job in closing argument was to convince the jury that there was only one person
that could have done this. And that's what I attempted, to thread all the evidence together and present them with a coherent theory of what happened that evening. There was only one person in the planet that could have killed Karen Swift, and it was David.
How do you think the prosecution did in presenting its case to the jurors?
I think that General Goodman had a very, very difficult case. It was an inherited case. It was very old evidence. I think that he did the absolute best that he could to try to bring justice to Karen Swift.
The prosecutor said that he would put the puzzle together, but the puzzle was incomplete. And so that's exactly what I argued. And that his version of the offense and what he claimed happened was incorrect or inconsistent with what was proven. There is no proof to support the state's theory in this case. You have heard all of my questions. You have heard all of the witnesses. The state said that this was a puzzle that they would put together for a complete picture. There is no complete picture.
In order to return a verdict, it is necessary that each juror agree thereto. Your verdict must be unanimous.
As it was going to the jury, we all kind of sat around and a bunch of family friends showed up, and we were sitting there trying to figure out, oh, what if the jury's saying this? What if they're saying that? But we really didn't know what was going on in that jury room.
We started deliberating. Why don't you think he's guilty? Why do you think he's guilty? We took an initial vote just to see where everybody was, and it was divided pretty much down the middle.
It was basically the guys against the girls.
According to juror David Liggins, some of those male jurors felt there just wasn't enough evidence to convict David Swift.
If you stomp somebody's head on concrete good enough to fracture her skull like it was fractured and busted, and then he can beat every law enforcement and science in the state, I don't believe that's possible this day and time. No physical evidence.
But for other jurors, they say David Swift's behavior towards Karen couldn't be ignored.
In my heart, I really thought he did something when he knew where she was at and what she was doing, because he was following her. That made me think that, yes, he did something.
As the jury was deliberating, things were very tense, and you could sense the tension minute by minute.
I actually was not surprised that the jury was deliberating as long as they did. Anytime you have a circumstantial case, you're going to have a lot of discussions, you're going to have a lot of opinions.
When the jury went out, it was tense on both sides. Both sides were just waiting. You have no choice other than to talk to your client, talk to his family. And so he obviously was nervous, and it could mean either him going home or either him staying, in custody.
After hours of fruitless deliberations, the jury tells the judge they were unable to reach a decision. He instructs them to keep trying.
After 10, 11 hours, you're getting tired.
Mentally exhausted. Everybody was so tired.
They couldn't reach a decision, so they stayed and they went home, and then they came back.
It got a little heated, but anytime you got difference of opinions, it's eventually going to get a little heated.
Finally, after 2 days of deliberation, the jury announces it has reached a decision.
When we walked back in there, everybody was looking, of course. They're going to see if they can tell whether you voted not guilty or guilty. Anybody would have voted like we did. But I do remember looking out in the gallery.
I saw one lady, she was shaking, and the longer it took, it was obvious to me that she was becoming more nervous. And this was pretty much the scene inside the courthouse.
I just prayed we had done the right thing.
Madam Foreperson, has the jury reached a verdict in this case?
After 2 days of grueling deliberation, the jury has come back in David Swift's murder trial.
Has the jury reached a verdict in this case?
No, Your Honor.
Do you feel like that it is likely that the jury on continued deliberations will reach a verdict?
No, sir.
I think the best word to describe what happened as the verdicts were being read was shock.
Does the jury agree on the highest level of offense that the defendant is either guilty or not guilty?
Yes.
What is the verdict in that?
Not guilty.
The jury came back not guilty on first-degree murder, not guilty on second-degree murder, and they were hung on voluntary manslaughter.
Do you all believe that the jury is hopelessly deadlocked with respect to the charge of voluntary manslaughter? I see everybody nodding their head yes.
I was just sitting there in the chair. I was just kind of just numb. I was like, I can't believe this. We spent all this time presenting the facts, and apparently they just didn't get it. The jury didn't get it.
The first two officers on the scene said that they did walk into the garage that day. I'm sorry, you could smell bleach if he had bleach in there. You could see the blood if he ain't cleaned it up yet. When they gave me a scenario, that's where he done it. And then they can't find nothing. That ended the case for me.
I think it stopped at manslaughter because I felt like he did something. In my heart, I really thought he did something.
When the verdict came in, your reaction?
Honestly, I really was not surprised. Reasonable doubt was everywhere.
I think the way that the prosecution laid it out was the only person that could have done it was David Swift. They didn't present proof that said that it was David Swift. If I removed myself and my knowledge of the case, and I was an independent person, I would have had to have rendered a verdict of not guilty.
One detail that the prosecution wasn't allowed to introduce at trial, David's indictment for allegedly stalking his second wife, Kelly. But some jurors say hearing about that accusation wouldn't have made a difference.
The only thing, in my opinion, that would have changed my outcome was the scenario the prosecution gave. Yes, that woman was beat to death, but they can't convince me that David done it.
Let me take you to the penultimate moment, which is, what was it like to hear the jury say not guilty?
Man, it was great. I thought, finally, it was overwhelming.
Although he was acquitted of murdering Karen, David Swift's legal ordeal is far from over. He's still facing that charge of stalking his second wife and remains in jail as he faces retrial on that voluntary manslaughter charge.
I'm disappointed that the jury didn't reach a decision that I thought they should as to all the offenses. And that's the jury system. And that's why we'll have a retrial.
We were confident going into the first trial. We're equally confident for a second trial. And I think that it's something that we can't give up on. It's just something that we have an obligation to do.
I'm not really sure what you expect to get out of a retrial when we've already seen the presentation of all this evidence before, and everybody has pretty much already formed a decision on it.
And today, 13 years after her mother disappeared, Ashley Swift, Karen and David's daughter, still steadfastly believes in her father's innocence.
Moving forward, I'm not exactly 100% sure what's going to happen. I hope that we can get my dad home soon. He is currently sitting in jail for something that, he shouldn't even be in jail for.
David has missed out on a lot of special things. He has missed the birth of a grandchild, his daughter's graduation from dental hygiene school, his oldest daughter, Ashley. He has missed Keely graduating high school.
What does justice for Karen Swift look like?
I think that in a situation like this, I think that we have to unfortunately reconcile with the fact that there may not be justice.
I will always remember Karen, and I think everybody should remember Karen by her love for children, that she was a great mother and she was a great friend.
I think one of the things I want people to know most about my mom is she's a very caring and nurturing person, and she would do anything for any of us kids or my dad. I would love to have my dad around again and, really fight for justice for my mom.
That's our program for tonight. I'm David Muir.
And I'm Deborah Roberts. From all of us here at 2020 and ABC News, good night. Silence of the Lambs.
Missing women, a terrifying suspect, and the detective who risks her life to solve the case. An all-new 2020 starts right now.
It's a baffling case.
Baffling.
To have missing women in this town of Ashland is a big deal.
A huge
Unusual.
deal. Very, very unusual.
Elizabeth was very naive. She would trust anybody and everybody. She was like, why haven't I heard from her and I can't find her?
The last known images of Elizabeth Griffith were recorded while she was shopping inside this Walmart.
It seemed like a very short time frame that people started to look for Elizabeth, that now Stacy is gone.
Just love to dance and just have fun with the kids. Just a bundle of joy.
She's like, some nice guy stopped to help.
You told her, let him go. Tell him to leave. You've got help coming.
Yeah. And
she wouldn't.
But now, a phone call that would change everything. A third woman taken.
There was a female and that she had been held captive.
Sounds like something out of a movie.
Absolutely.
A horror movie.
You can hear her desperation for help.
It's a chilling call.
Come on. Just put the phone down.
Did you know anything about what you were about to face?
No.
And I saw her hand. I saw her outstretched hand through the window.
And then the line goes silent.
Yep.
What is the address to your emergency? 4th Street, Laundromat. Powell. I've been assaulted.
It's 6:48 a.m. in September 2016. Emergency dispatchers receive a 911 call from a terrified woman. She's whispering that she's being held at a house near the laundromat and that her captor is asleep at her side.
Is he in the same room with you? Yes. Does he have a weapon? He's got a taser. Is there any way you can get out of the building? I don't know without waking him, and I'm scared. His bedroom is closed, and he made it so it would make noise. And we have officers we're sending.
Officer Kurt Dorsey rushes to the scene, leaving his siren off so that it does not alert the abductor. So, what were you doing when the call came in?
We responded from the police station. We were trying to be stealthy. We were told that the suspect was sleeping, so we wanted to approach and not make a bunch of noise.
You weren't even sure the call was real, right?
I didn't believe it was real at first, just because of the town that we live in. Just not a typical call that we would get in Ashland.
Ashland, Ohio. It's a small city between Columbus and Cleveland, home to more than 50 churches and a large Amish community.
Ashland is a quiet, rural community. There's about 20,000 people who live there. It has a university, a lot of farm fields.
So this is Ashland. What can you tell me about the town?
Well, as you can see, it's rolling hills, scenic. A lot of community stuff going on. Football games. The county fair. A lot of farm animals, a lot of competitions and shows for kids to get involved with.
Typical small town where everyone knows everyone, right?
Yes, exactly.
Kim Major has had 23 years of service as a detective in Ashland.
I handled violent crime and I handled sex offenses and child abuse. I'm over 1,000 of those cases.
1,000?
Yeah.
At the time of that terrifying 911 call, the community is already on edge. Just a week before, police discovered that a woman in town had simply vanished.
Well, there was a missing person named Elizabeth Griffith.
Yes. Elizabeth was known in our town. I had had contact with her. I think we all had. A lot of the officers would have an eye on her.
She was kind of a vulnerable person, and we helped her quite a bit as a police division.
She used to call them quite frequently. She would call them about anything and everything. Just like, I heard it's going to snow today. Is there any chance that the roads will be closed? She was definitely a character.
Facing mental health challenges, 29-year-old Elizabeth Griffith attended meetings at a peer support center called LifeWorks.
Elizabeth was very bubbly and energetic. The first time I met Elizabeth was at LifeWorks, and she was coming down the hallway and I was coming opposite of her. And she was like, "Hey, you're new here." And I was like, "Yeah?" And she was like, "You want to be my friend?" And I was like, "Sure, let's be friends."
She was embraced not just by LifeWorks, but also by her church family.
Elizabeth was a really sweet girl, a simple person. She liked to make people laugh. She liked to sing. She loved to worship. She would raise her hand the highest during worship. Even though she was tone deaf, she'd sing louder than anyone else. She was very much with the heart of a child. It was a little harder for her to grasp some things sometimes.
She was a very loving person and a very loyal person. Certainly financial challenges, certainly medical challenges, mental health challenges.
She lived on her own in her own apartment. She did have a case manager that kind of helped her with daily life struggles. She was always introducing herself to everybody, very outgoing.
The community knew Elizabeth, and she was one of ours, and she was taken care of.
But then Elizabeth's support team realizes no one has seen her in weeks.
We were at LifeWorks and the phone rang, and it was Elizabeth's case manager. And she had asked if we had seen Elizabeth lately. She was like, "I can't find her." So I called her cell phone and it just went straight to voicemail, which was highly unlikely for Elizabeth. I was like, something's not right.
I was concerned because where would she have gone? What could have happened?
She wasn't the type of person that would go missing, so we sort of knew something was wrong there.
This is an area where I would often see Elizabeth Griffith walking, and just days before her disappearance, I stopped and chatted with her right up here.
It was a baffling case.
It was baffling. We didn't know if she had taken off or did she meet somebody online and leave. We didn't know if it was suicide. We didn't know where she was.
Everybody was taking to social media, posting pictures of her. Everyone was looking for her. Everybody was praying for her.
Police began to investigate, speaking to Elizabeth's neighbors and friends and tracing her last known steps.
I began talking with some of the public transit drivers because she would often use public transportation.
Before she disappeared, records showed that Elizabeth had taken the bus to go shopping.
The last known images of Elizabeth Griffith were recorded while she was shopping inside this Walmart.
There's video of her going through the aisles and then waiting for the bus.
She disappeared shortly thereafter, and she wouldn't be the only one. It turns out there's another missing woman in Ashland.
I said, "All right, Mom, I love you. I'll talk to you tomorrow." And that was the last we ever heard from her.
Police in Ashland, Ohio are searching for missing woman Elizabeth Griffith, and then they discover there's a second woman in town who also has mysteriously disappeared. 43-year-old Stacy Stanley, a divorced mom, devoted to her sons, Curtis and Corey.
One of my mom's favorite songs was Leonard Skinner's Freebird. It's a pretty good song.
Corey likes simple pleasures, playing music, riding his motorcycle on the highways of Ohio, raising his baby daughter. For him, family is everything, and his bond with his mother, Stacy, has always been particularly tight.
Good boy, you kiss your brother.
How would you describe her?
Very loving and caring, to do anything for anybody, give the shirt off her back if she needed to.
Always there for her kids, calling you consistently. If she didn't pick up, she'd call you like 1,000 times.
My sister was a very outgoing person.
It's a perfect time to make this wish. Have a happy birthday. Love, Grandma and Grandpa Stanley. $5.
Growing up, we were so close in age and we shared the same room and stuff growing up.
And karaoke?
She would sing some songs.
Now and then when I see your face.
She loved punk rock music and the look, too.
Guns N' Roses, Sweet Child of Mine. I actually had a video of her singing it when we were kids. I was videotaping her singing that.
So she was not afraid to get on stage and perform?
No.
Even as adults, you were pretty close.
Yeah, I'd come home from work and she'd have big bunches of food made up, and I was like, oh, wow.
I hear she was a great cook.
Yeah, we didn't get look like this over nothing,
She fed you well, huh?
Yes,
sir.
Absolutely.
And Stacy was a new grandmother to Curtis's 3-year-old daughter.
She was a great grandmother. She was spoiled the hell out of her for sure.
Just love to dance and just have fun with the kids. Just a bundle of joy.
Stacy lived in Greenwich, Ohio, 30 minutes from Ashland.
Stacy was not from our county. She was from a county that butts up to our county, and she had visited Ashland.
It was September 8th, 2016, when she takes a fateful drive to Ashland to run some errands.
She went to Walmart to get some gardening supplies because she loved doing her gardening, and she also went to get her nails done. And then after that, she was getting some gas and to come back home.
It's around 8:30 at night when Stacy calls her son Corey from this gas station. She's stranded here with a flat tire and needs help.
She was like freaking out, and I said, well, just calm down, we'll find somebody to help you.
Were you worried?
Oh, not necessarily out the rip.
It's just a flat tire, you're thinking?
Just a flat tire, yeah.
They're able to find a family friend to meet Stacy at the gas station, but it turns out a stranger has also shown up to help.
She's like, some nice guy stopped to help. I then told her to tell him to kick rocks. We got somebody coming to help you. And
she wouldn't?
Well, she's like, oh, he's a nice guy, just stopped to help. And so my mom, the person she was friendly and talked to people. This guy takes over and he changes the tire. She offers him a ride home. And I said, all right, Mom. I said, call me in the morning. She's like, okay, I love you. I'll talk to you tomorrow. I said, all right, love you too, Mom.
But the next day, Corey and Curtis don't receive the usual flurry of calls from their mom.
And then I talked to my aunt, and I'm like, hey, Mom's not picking up. I don't know what's going on. We ended up breaking into her house to get in, and she had 2 little dogs. She loved them little dogs, little chihuahuas.
Her dogs were still in their kennel, so we knew something was going on.
The Huron County Sheriffs had put out a bolo, be on the lookout for her vehicle.
We went driving the roads
looking for her.
In case she might have had an accident, was down in a ravine or a ditch or anything. We went looking, driving the routes from Ashland back to Greenwich.
Within hours, Stacy's family spreads out across the streets of Ashland, trying to find any trace of her.
We went down to the gas station, the BP, where she was last seen.
I had printed off like almost 2,000 or 3,000 flyers. We were just passing them out and putting them up everywhere. And there's probably a good 70 of us, at least, out there handing flyers out.
Detective Brian Evans is on patrol in Ashland when he spots the family.
As I was driving around the city of Ashland, I met up with different groups of her family who was actively searching for Stacy at the time. They were in different groups knocking on doors. They were going down to some abandoned buildings.
Well, I came across the radio that somebody had reported her car on East 9th Street in Ashland. We beat the cops over to the car.
And I opened the door, and I looked, I was like, the seat was all the way back. So my mom was short, so it didn't make sense why the seat was back.
I had grabbed her cigarette container she put her cigarette butts in, and I happened to see a Camel filtered cigarettes in there. And I was like, these aren't my mom's. My mom don't smoke these. At this point, it's alarming because somebody else was in this car.
So now it's not just Elizabeth Griffith who is missing in Ashland.
It seemed like a very short time frame that people started to look for Elizabeth, that now Stacy is gone. The odds of two women missing at the same time just did not make sense whatsoever.
To have two missing women in this town of Ashland is a big deal.
It's a huge
Unusual?
deal. Very, very unusual for a county this size to have anyone missing, much less two women missing.
The community had concern. The word was starting to spread around.
We were like, what's really going on? It's Ashland. Like, stuff like that doesn't happen in Ashland.
Then, a heart-stopping clue in a window at the back of the house. Sounds like something out of a movie.
Absolutely.
A horror movie.
I'm a 911 dispatcher, Ashland Police Department. I've been a dispatcher for 26 years.
What is your typical day like?
I go to work, sign into all the computers. We usually have 6 to 8 screens depending on what center you're at. Answer calls. You never know when the call will come in or what kind of call it's going to be.
Your most memorable call?
Probably this one.
911, what is the address to your emergency?
September 13th, 2016. 6:48 a.m.
Yep, the end of my shift.
By September 13th, 2016, Elizabeth Griffith had not been seen for a month. Stacy Stanley for 5 days. You're working the dispatch and you get that call.
At first I couldn't hear her. It was real quiet. She was whispering.
What's the problem? I've been abducted.
She says, I've been abducted.
Yes.
Your reaction?
My reaction was to find out where she was at first, to get her out of there.
20 West 81st Street.
The dispatcher had told us that there was a female and that she had been held captive somewhere near a laundromat. So we immediately start to drive towards the area of the call.
Where's she at now? Where's she sleeping at? In the bedroom.
I asked her more questions, trying to get as much as I could before he woke up.
You have to be calm, but there's an urgency.
Yes.
The woman says she's calling from her abductor's phone.
He had fallen asleep at some point, and she was able to secure this phone.
You couldn't trace the call back then?
Couldn't trace the call. This was a flip phone. It was not coming back to a location.
Do you need an ambulance? Are you bleeding from anywhere? Not anymore. Where were you bleeding from? You don't have to talk if you don't need to, okay?
Why couldn't she get out on her own?
Well, he had taken the doorknobs off, apparently.
As Officer Dorsey heads to the scene, there's a problem. How to find her?
The caller does not know her exact address, but she tells 911 she's being held captive in a house next to this laundromat. The problem for police is that there are 2 very similar houses in this area. There were 2 houses right here?
Yes. 2 identical houses.
And you didn't know which one?
No, they were nearly identical, both the same color, same shape, 2-story. We had no idea which one.
They can't just gang bust into a house. What if he'd have woke up with a weapon and hurt her? So they had to find her quietly. So they were outside looking for her.
So how do you approach the house knowing that the captor is asleep?
So we first started to just look in windows to see if we could see anything. Just check different doors to see if we can pinpoint which house she's in.
As police conduct the search, there's a heart-stopping moment when the caller says she has awakened her abductor.
Oh, come on. Just set the phone down.
You can hear the sheer terror in her voice when he wakes up.
Yep.
And then the line goes silent. It must have seemed like
Yes,
that.
forever.
What's going through your mind?
I'm just praying they find her.
Five agonizing minutes later, she's back.
Yep.
Are you still there? Okay. Do you hear any officers outside? Okay, they're in the area.
What was it like to hear her voice again?
It was good. Glad she was still there and not hurt. And he was still sleeping. So that's good.
You can hear her desperation for help.
It's a chilling call.
It's chilling.
I remember as I was checking the doors, panic starts to set in. I wanted to find her so bad. We're going back and forth between the 2 houses. The dispatcher had told us at some point that she heard a door.
Okay, I can hear him. Do you hear him?
I remembered that I had pulled on a door hard and it made a noise that I didn't intend. So I ran around the house that we were currently at and looked towards the direction of the other house.
They told him to come back. She said, hurry, hurry.
And I saw her hand. I saw her outstretched hand through the window, and I knew at that point she was in there. I would have gone through the wall to get to her.
A hand right on the window. That's pretty eerie. Sounds like something out of a movie.
Absolutely.
A horror movie.
We went to the door. It was locked, and I asked the dispatcher to relay to her that she needed to unlock the door.
Can you unlock the door at all?
She's able to unlock it, and we're able to open it.
Hurry up, get out here. Where is he? I'm sleeping. Still sleeping? Yeah. Okay, they have her.
It took 19 long minutes to get her out. What was it like when you finally hear Detective Dorsey?
It's the best sound ever. I was glad because the officers were safe. She was safe.
You smiled a little because you're proud of her?
Yeah, proud of her.
What a relief.
What was it like when you came face to face with the victim?
I'll never forget the way that she looked at us. She looked shocked, like she had seen a ghost. She was fully nude. I don't think I've ever felt so much relief to find her. Divine intervention and a good dispatcher led us to that house and ultimately that door.
So now, police need to find out what happened in this house.
Hurry up, get out here. Where is he? I'm sleeping. Still sleeping? Yeah. Okay, they have her.
With the terrified 911 caller safely in their custody, police turned their attention to her abductor, a 40-year-old man identified as Sean Great. The dramatic moment when he's apprehended is heard on that open line from the 911 call.
Once we got Mr. Great into custody, he was handcuffed. He ended up in my car. So I began interviewing Mr. Great.
And how do you know her again?
We spend a lot of time lately together. We go eat lunch every day.
The victim, a 36-year-old woman, police identify as Jane Doe to protect her privacy. It's transported to the Ashland Police Department. Police are desperate for information. No easy task, as the woman was traumatized and still in shock. But Ashland Police have a secret weapon. Enter Detective Kim Major.
Kim is the best interviewer that I've ever seen. She's able to speak with anyone, whether that be small kids or a violent criminal.
I was the only female detective for the majority of my career. Is that good? Is that good?
Major balanced the demands of detective work with the responsibilities of being a mother to 3. That morning, Detective Kim Major is in the shower getting ready for work, and she misses 2 phone calls from her captain at the Ashland Police Department.
And I called him back, and he said, well, he gruffed at me and said 2 calls and a text. And he said, there's been a kidnapping. We've rescued the woman, and I need you to come in and interview her.
You come to the station, and what happens?
The victim was taken into my office at the end of this hallway, and that's where I spoke with her.
She had been tortured emotionally and physically.
Yes, she had. So I bring her into my office.
The effects of the woman's harrowing ordeal were immediately apparent.
The first thing I noticed is her appearance, of course. I could see that she had been victimized. The second thing I noticed was that I could smell the scent of her perpetrator. It's testosterone.
You could smell him.
I could.
What did you learn about Jane?
I learned that she had met Sean Great. She eats her noon meal at what we call the Croc Center. They provide free meals at noon. Jane Doe would eat there sometimes, and that's where she met Sean Great.
He was tall like my brother, my older brother, and he's kind of goofy, but he struck me as kind. Like when I would run into him at lunch, and if neither one of us was doing anything, we'd just walk around Ashland.
This is a woman so strong in her Christian faith that no man's phone number is in her phone, not one. No man crosses the threshold of her door.
He let me know that he would be interested in more, but I told him that I wasn't interested in, in beyond friends.
Kim was speaking with Jane Doe, and our captain at the time, Captain Lay, was speaking with Sean Great in the interview room.
David Lay, you are Sean Great.
At the same time Jane Doe and Sean Great were being interviewed at the station, Detective Brian Evans was part of a team sent back to search the house where Jane had been held captive.
We went upstairs. The mattress in the bedroom looked like a dirty used mattress that was just found somewhere and used as a mattress. And then there were some restraints, as in tied clothing, tied to different areas of the mattress to where it looked like that's where Jane Doe was possibly tied up.
So just how did Jane Doe end up a prisoner in this house of horrors? The pair had been out for one of their regular walks and ended up at the house where Sean Great had been staying.
He told her that he had some clothes for her. She also had bagged up some food for him. And she said it was against her better judgment to walk through the door because it's unlike her. But she did.
He just started showing me the clothes, and I remember him asking if I had an extra Bible, because he didn't have one, so I got him one.
So she sat down to read the Bible, and as she's reading, he began to pace. And then he charged towards her, grabbed the Bible from her hands, ripped it from her hands.
Jane Doe tells Detective Major that at that point, Sean Great attacked her.
I tried to push him away and get up. I was just doing everything, trying to kick, punch, but everything I did, he just did it so much harder.
And then what did he do to her?
Sexually assaulted her. And her words were every way imaginable.
He would always bind my wrists, my legs, at times.
The details were horrifying, but the interview takes a sudden turn when Jane Doe mentions the name of Elizabeth Griffith, one of 2 missing women police had been searching for.
She lived in the building next to me. Sweet, but like a child. Sean and I were playing badminton in the front yard, and Elizabeth saw us and came out. I think she just started, talking with us, and I don't know if I introduced her or she introduced herself.
Police discover there's a vital link between Jane Doe, Sean Great, and Elizabeth Griffith. All 3 of them would frequent this community center where they'd get free meals. That connection sets off alarm bells.
Was it possible that this man, unknown to law enforcement in Ashland, Sean Great, was also involved in the disappearance of Elizabeth Griffith?
When I stepped out of my office, my captain said, "Listen, I need you to go in and talk to him about what Jane Doe told you. Can you go in and see if you can nail down the facts regarding that, see if it parallels what he's saying happened?" "Hey, Sean, I'm Kim Major. Nice to meet you." The last thing he said before I walked in was, "And while you're in there, see if he knows anything about the missing girls."
Did you know anything about what you were about to face? What do you do?
Well, I walked down this hallway. I was told to go ahead and interview him, and this is where the interview room is. And when I came in, he was seated right here.
Oh, he's right here.
Yeah. "Hey, Sean, I'm Kim Major. Nice to meet you."
Before you came in here, did you have any idea what you were in for?
No, I had no idea.
You had your own recorder.
Yes,
And what did you do?
I took the recorder and just dropped it down my top.
Because you wanted a record of this.
Yes, just a backup in case something happened, and in this case, it proved valuable.
Valuable indeed, because the video system stopped recording shortly after Detective Major began interviewing Great. That means her backup was the only recording of the interview while the system was down.
So we're going to get these cuffs off here.
You decided to take off his handcuffs.
Yeah,
Why?
I need to drop all of those things that would inhibit somebody's ability to relax or feel comfortable.
But out of his handcuffs, he could attack you.
He could.
You weren't thinking about that.
At that time, no.
In a city where law enforcement routinely interacts with the community, Sean Great was not known to police.
I had never heard his name. I had never had any tips about him. We didn't know him.
Sean Great had grown up in Marion, Ohio. That's about an hour from Ashland. He was a good-looking kid, charming.
With Sean Great, people talk about his eyes. They're piercing blue eyes. And women will talk about that. That's how they recall him, or his eyes.
He just had one of these very likable personalities, very soft, laid back, very unassuming type of personality. And it was just one of those things that you just almost couldn't hardly not like.
Sean never told me much at all about his background. I knew he had either a sister and a brother. I had never met his dad. He told me his mom abandoned him. He absolutely hated his mother.
Christina Hildreth dated Sean Great for 5 years.
I think before we moved in together, he had worked at, it was a motel, Super 8 or something in Marion, and he might have worked there a couple of weeks. That was about it. Other than that, I've never known him to have a job.
While unknown to police in Ashland, Sean Gray had become a familiar face at the Croc Center.
He would just come to our hot meal and just kind of integrated himself into the community meal and the community that attended and started making friends. I'd see him around town, walking and talking with people, and he just really kind of absorbed what we had.
What did he say about Jane?
At first, he tried to present it as if she wanted him, like they were in a relationship, that she wanted the sexual piece of this.
One of the reasons why she said she wanted to marry me because she was horny that day.
Eventually, as we peel that away, you realize she didn't want this.
Just as empathy had helped in speaking to Jane Doe, Major was using a similar approach, hoping to gain Gray's trust. And slowly, he begins to open up, sharing details about his childhood.
May have started when my mom left me when I was a child. I come home from school and she's gone, but I don't blame her. I used to, but...
Why did she leave?
She had to go find herself.
I'm sorry.
It's fine.
Does he admit that something happened with Jane Doe?
Eventually, he begins to talk about what happened and admits in layers. He admits that he had held her there captive, admits that he had tied her up. I mean, looking at this whole thing, you forced her to have sex. She didn't want to.
I abducted her. And I raped her.
And there it was. Detective Major had the confession, but the confession itself only raised more questions.
As he spoke about what he did to Jane Doe and would use the words kill, that he strangled her, you begin to realize this may be way more than Jane Doe. And earlier in my career, I probably would have stopped right at Jane Doe. Now, I realize it's a partial confession.
Detective Major brings the conversation back to Elizabeth Griffith, that missing woman who Jane Doe said also knew Sean Gray.
We can't find Elizabeth. We'll find her, but we can't right now. Hey, look at me. Look at me. I need your help.
Help you.
That goes on for just so long enough that he's acting like he has no idea what I'm talking about.
And then suddenly, Sean Gray makes a shocking revelation.
I might not be able to take you to her, maybe someone else.
How many are there?
I don't think you say many.
Now, detectives knew Elizabeth Griffith and Stacy Stanley were missing, but now Sean Gray seems to be talking about even more women.
I guess I'm ready to go ahead and get my lethal injection, but I'll tell you everything first.
Then things take a bizarre and frightening turn.
I'm thinking, this is not good.
At what point do you realize I might be dealing with a serial killer? You're in this very room alone with a serial killer.
The magnitude was becoming clearer to me. Whatever he did, I'm going to get it.
Police are now investigating whether they have a serial killer on their hands.
Are there any other girls in the house right now?
He had cut a slit into the back of the couch, and he was crawling in and out of the couch, and he would come out at night.
He says, meet the other me. I just froze. The first thing that hit my mind is a monster.
You don't normally have a killer show you how he did it.
He said, I'll just do it on you. Kind of grinned. I'd get up behind him like this. He locks this in, he locks this arm in, he locks this head here, and then he just pushes down and squeezes.
Wow.
At one point, he told me it was probably a good thing I had him in custody. because there would be more.
We knew that she was relatively young. She had perfect teeth. We had somebody that had confessed to her murder.
A fellow inmate tells you that Sean Gray, that he wants to kill you?
No, that desire. I'm feeling it now.
Sean Great has confessed to his assault on Jane Doe. But what about those two missing women in Ashland? It's an urgent race to find out. Is he behind their disappearance? And can they be saved?
And as you continue interrogating Sean Great, time is of the essence.
Time is always of the essence. I feel like I'm against the clock to get him to say something before I say the wrong thing and cause them to stop talking at all.
And you're thinking he might have these two missing women and they could still be alive.
Absolutely. I start pressing him on where Elizabeth Griffith is. Can you take me to where she is?
I can't.
Why? Sean, look at me. If I take you in my little detective truck, can you take me out?
I don't know what you're talking about right now.
I'm looking for Elizabeth's body. Can you take me to it?
She's dead?
Then suddenly Sean Great reveals shocking information that maybe he can bring Detective Major to somebody else.
I might not be able to take you to her. Maybe someone else.
How many are there?
I don't know. What did you say, many?
What?
I don't know. There might not be none.
He says he might not be able to take me to her, meaning Elizabeth, but might take me to someone else, and that there might be so many or there might be none.
So he's playing with you.
Possibly he's wanting to tell me something. Will you take me there?
I think it's a place in Mansfield.
Where she is? Where are you going to take me to Mansfield? Where there's another girl?
Where there is a girl. Like nuts.
What happened? Is she gone?
She's been gone.
Is she in a house? What is she in?
What?
Alright, what's her name? Candace? Cunningham?
He tells you there's someone else and that woman is Candace Cunningham.
Yes.
Did you know who she was?
I did not know Candace. Candace hadn't been reported missing.
As our colleagues watching in the other room start looking for information on Candace Cunningham, Detective Major continues to question Sean for more information. After all, the two missing women in Ashland are still unaccounted for.
As I watched the interview, I could see that Sean was warming up to Kim. He was telling her more. Her methods were working.
What was it about you that he connected with, felt comfortable with?
He told me that I had empathy, that he could see it. Who else?
The house. Where I came from.
Yeah? Is somebody in there?
Yeah.
Who is it? Is it Elizabeth? Where is she in there?
In the closet.
So then Sean admits to you that Elizabeth's body is in the closet in that same house where he was holding Jane Doe.
Right in the same house. When he said that, I didn't know if she was alive or not.
As Kim's interviewing, I called Detective Brian Evans to tell him that Elizabeth was upstairs in a closet. He had been working on a search warrant at the house.
I was surprised by the information because officers had cleared the house. we headed upstairs to see if we could locate Elizabeth. This is an abandoned house that has old wooden steps. You could see bare footprints going upstairs.
One of the guys on scene said, "There is no closet upstairs." That detective went directly to a particular room and looked up and realized there was a concealed closet.
There was a bunch of clothing just all over this closet.
There were stuffed animals piled down below.
As we started pulling away the clothes, you could see the fly activity, and there was an electrical tape that was taped up around the sides of the door to help from the smell to come from the door. And once the door is open, there was another large pile of clothing. You could see the fly activity again all over the clothing.
Elizabeth's body was underneath all this.
Yes, it was.
What goes through your mind at that point?
Well, that it was a tragedy, and once the clothes were removed, her body, she was actually kind of face down and hog-tied back.
Chilling.
Yes, it was very sad.
Sean tells Detective Major that the night of Elizabeth's murder all began when he says she called him late at night because she couldn't sleep.
She came over about 11 o'clock when she brought over Yossi, late Yossi. It just happened that the truck just reached up and just choked her.
We just didn't think it was possible. It couldn't have been Elizabeth. It just couldn't have been. And then we found out it was.
And we just sobbed and sobbed because it had come to a conclusion that we were not going to see our friend again.
You're in this very room alone with a serial killer.
Yes. As it progressed, the magnitude was becoming clearer to me.
I guess I'm ready to go ahead and get my lethal injection, but I'll tell you everything first.
He's bought into me. He's going to talk to me. Whatever he did, I'm going to get it.
Sean Great has confessed to the kidnapping and rape of Jane Doe, the murder of Elizabeth Griffith, and knowledge of the disappearance of Candace Cunningham. But Stacy Stanley is still missing, and Detective Major has a hunch he knows more about her as well. As the hours tick by in this very same room,
Yes,
you got more and more out of him.
that's right. It just kept coming out in layers, a little bit more and a little bit more. Are there any other girls in the house right now? Yeah?
One down in the basement.
Down in the basement? What's her name?
Stacy.
He tells me that Stacy Stanley was in the basement of the home under a pile of trash.
Now remember, Stacy was that missing woman whose family had been searching for her after she was seen with a stranger changing her tire at that BP gas station. Sean says he was that stranger, and he tells Detective Major his version of what happened that night.
She came home with me. We kind of hit it off pretty good. And then we didn't. When we saw her fast, I just snapped on her.
The mood at the police division was shock. It was just chaotic and pretty unreal.
Then you get another disturbing call. There's another body in the basement.
Yes, if you go down the basement, there's space behind the stairwell. There was multiple bags of trash stacked up, and underneath the trash is where Stacy was. There was actually a picture of just her hand kind of sticking out of the trash, eerily saying, I'm here.
Have you ever seen anything like this in all your years of police work?
No, I've been on other homicides and other tragic cases, but not to this magnitude, no. A lot of our local community was coming to the area, and you could tell the feeling in the air was that the people knew that we found bodies in that house.
What started as a rescue ended with a gruesome discovery that only got worse. Now, families wait to find out if those women are their loved ones.
I got a phone call saying I need to get to Ashland ASAP.
I don't want it to be my mom. I mean, nobody wants it to be their mom. I don't get to watch her grow old. My daughter she don't get to watch my daughter grow up.
Honestly, I think that my sister's in that house and they're not going to know anything for a couple hours.
They pulled out a couple pictures. They're like, do you guys recognize that? I said, yeah, that's my mom's picture.
It was very traumatic, having to see that, and that was my mom laying there,
It's bad enough what he did, but for some reason, thinking that he put her under trash. It makes it worse.
It still touches you.
It does. For me, the day that cases don't impact me would be the day that I need to pack it in.
You want it to touch you. You want to feel
I want it to touch me. I mean, I don't want to be in an interview and lose control, but these ladies mattered.
But Detective Major had to put aside her emotions. Sean Great had confessed to a third woman named Candace Cunningham.
Candace was a little tiny, vibrant woman, lived in the next county over, Richland County. Candace had not been reported missing, and Candace had dated Sean Great.
On her Facebook page, Candace posts about Sean Great, including this picture, and later writing, "I am back with Sean and love him." It was just 1 month before her murder. In the interrogation room, Sean describes strangling her in an abandoned house after an alleged altercation.
3 o'clock in the morning, I hit in the face with a bag of tobacco. I just stabbed.
After I was done interviewing him, which went all day, I had asked him if he would take me to where Candace's body was.
What's going through your mind?
I was hoping that he wouldn't shut down from just having the emotions of going back to that place. So this is the scene where the home was, where Candace Cunningham was living with Sean Great. So there was a home here. He burned it down after he murdered her in the home.
Investigators took video of Sean that day as he led them to where he left Candace's body.
He's agreed to come out and show us where he put the body.
He killed her in a house that was here and then dragged her body toward the ravine.
Prior to burning that down, he carried her body wrapped up in a blanket. He carried her to the ravine.
Yeah, I remember these rocks.
How far down?
Carried her across the creek and up, straight up the hill, about between 10 to 15 feet. There's a big shrub.
While you were here, Sean got emotional.
He did. When we rolled up, I actually had to ask him, "Are you okay? You okay?" All right. And he said it was hard. It was hard.
What was it like to finally find this woman and give it some closure?
Like, I wanted to go down to the ravine and rescue her, but she's gone. Frustrating that she hadn't been reported missing, that no one even knew at all.
As the investigation continues, Sean performs another show and tell.
I just lost it. And then I just turned her around.
Revealing more deadly secrets. During the interrogation, you asked Sean to show you his strangulation technique.
He said, "I'll just do it on you." Kind of grinned.
Next to that desperate call for help from a woman being held captive, police are now investigating whether they have a serial killer on their hands.
Sean Michael Great is being held for kidnapping tonight, and the sheriff's department says he should be charged with murder.
Lord, I told that Undertaker, Undertaker, please drive slow.
The community response was one of just complete shock. People had no idea that something like this could happen here.
Even though I don't know them, we are thinking about them and praying for them.
All I kept saying was, oh my God. And it was just like, this is unreal. No, we're not talking about the same guy.
I was just like, how? I knew he had this anger, but when I first found out, I couldn't comprehend that this was something he had actually done.
Those closest to Great were surprised to learn of his killing spree, despite them having their own chilling experiences with him. His former girlfriend, Christina Hildreth, says Great once spied on her from inside her sofa.
He says, I've been living in the couch. He said, when you came in, you were sitting on me. I seen everything you did. He had cut a slit into the back of the couch, and he was crawling in and out of the couch, and he would come out at night. That was terrifying.
And his friend Tim Dennis claims he had a text exchange with Sean that made his blood run cold.
He had, just out of the clear blue, asked me if he could borrow $20. And I told him no. All of a sudden, here's this whole slew of scathing messages. And he told me, bed bugs are coming to your house, roaches are coming. And then he makes this statement. He says, meet the other me. Honestly, I just froze. The first thing that hit my mind is a monster.
2 days after his arrest, you go interview him again now with Detective Evans?
Yes, I did. I asked him if there was anything else he wanted to get off his chest. Anything else you thought about that you haven't talked about? What's that?
Cold case. They've already found her. I'm thinking her name's Dana. I told her to forget her name.
He tells me that he had killed a woman in Marion County.
10 years earlier.
10 years earlier.
Dana.
He didn't know her name for sure.
Who was she?
She had come to his mother's house to sell magazines.
Sean says he got upset because the woman didn't deliver the magazines that Sean's mother had ordered.
He said he was in town and just happened to see her. So he said he made up a story that he had money back at his house.
So that's when I fronted her. So you're gonna rip me off like you did my mom, Dad. That's when I choked her out right here.
He said he placed her out by some railroad tracks. Her body had been found years and years ago. She just hadn't been identified.
Detective Major knows authorities will need to figure out who this Dana is, but they press on, probing Sean about key details of his other murders.
Detective Evans and I decided we might try to have him show us how he strangled the victims. So Brian Evans says, would you do this on a doll?
And what did he say?
He said, I'll just do it on you, and kind of grinned. I was like, okay, and then we got up.
So I roll the camera. Okay, this is Detective Major. We have Detective Evans in the room, Sean Great in the room. Then he kind of just gets behind Brian and does a hold on him.
Brad just grab her.
I look at Brian's eyes and I'm thinking, this is not good.
So I'm you, and you're Sean. So what did he do?
So he just came up behind. He said I'd get up behind him like this, and then he comes back. He locks this in, he locks this arm in, he locks this head here, and then he just pushes down and squeezes.
Wow.
And at that point, I kind of mouthed over to Detective Major that I'm not doing that again.
You could have lost consciousness in seconds. He could have killed you.
I didn't put a whole lot of thought into that. It just went to getting the evidence, and I feel I have some training that I don't believe he would have killed me.
Police don't normally get this kind of demonstrative evidence. You don't normally have a killer not only confess to a crime, but then actually show you how he did it.
How do you know to stop? She went like this.
This morning, suspect Sean Great held on a $1 million bond and facing double murder and kidnapping charges.
Do you understand the nature of the 3 offenses charged in the complaint, Mr. Great?
Yes, Your Honor.
He seemed kind of unalarming. I could understand why maybe women were trusting of him or went with him willingly, because he didn't look like a monster.
Law enforcement is on the hunt to figure out just who is this unidentified woman Sean Great has confessed to killing 10 years prior in neighboring Marion County.
Nobody knew who she was. It was a great mystery.
Investigators reached out to the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation.
My name is Samantha Molnar. My position at Ohio BCI is a forensic artist. I can do a clay facial reconstruction from those skeletal remains. We can actually 3D print an exact replica of the skull. I basically start doing the clay reconstruction from there, building the muscle structure on the face, placing the average tissue depth markers, and then kind of finishing the sculpture. We did receive some tips, but none of those tips led to an identity.
Detective Kim Major isn't just trying to crack the Sean Great case. She also has to juggle the full-time job of being a mom to 3 active kids.
All right, hook her up.
I'm always worried about her, no matter where she is. I would stay up at night, me and my little brother would, and just wait till she gets home.
I try to say that I am not overprotective of my kids, but I'm sure I am.
But could this case put Kim or her family in grave danger?
When the case was going on, our fair kicked off. I get a phone call, and it's a man, and he said, "I have your daughter." On Friday night, my husband coaches football. I actually took my younger kids to the football game. And I sat there, which was also surreal, seeing all the things around me and the lights.
People are happy.
They're happy, they're cracking the helmets. The band, watching my husband, hearing the whistles.
Friday Night Lights.
It's Friday Night Lights. That's small town America. I brought my kids home, put them to bed.
That's when Detective Major's oldest son, Corbin, who's preparing to enter the police academy, comes into the room.
He's like, "What's going on, Mom?" I said, "Sean Great builds forts all over the place. He's like MacGyver. He stays in these things. But there's one in particular he keeps talking about."
He had a fort in the woods, and she explained to me where it was. And I remember there was a body recovery within a quarter to a half mile that deemed a drug overdose right on a gas line.
I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Yeah, there was a woman that died of an overdose, and they dumped her body there."
We also just learned a body was found in Ashland County. Police say a gas company worker found the body behind a tree on County Road 1908, just south of Route 30.
And he said, "Hold on a second."
I kind of marked out where she thought his fort exactly was and kind of marked the distance. It was on the same county road. I was like, there's no way this is just a coincidence. This has to be from him. It's just, there's no way it's not.
I said, "Honey, it's an overdose and a dumping." And he said, "That's because of her lifestyle. And people assume it's that." He said, "He did it. You have to go talk to him. You have to do something." The next morning, went in to the jail, pulled Sean Great out. There's a case from out in the county, meaning that we found a girl. And we're trying to see if you'll be honest, if that's something you had something to do with.
Rebecca Lacey.
Yes, sir.
I had problems with her once.
31-year-old Rebecca Lacey's death had been ruled a drug overdose by the Ashland County coroner. But now, Sean Great shares what he says happened to her.
We played a game of pool. I went to the bathroom, right? I had some money in my wallet. And that's the first thing I did was just check my wallet. And it was gone.
He said she had stolen a few dollars from him. And he said he had strangled her. He talks about borrowing a car and taking her body out and dumping her in my county.
This is where Rebecca Lacey's body was found.
Yes, right against this tree right here.
When was she found here?
March of 2015, her body was found, and she had been here for a couple months.
Hard to believe that such a heinous crime could have happened here.
It should be a place of solitude, but instead, it's a place where a woman's body was discarded like she didn't matter.
But Rebecca Lacey's case was public knowledge, and Detective Major needed proof that Sean was actually involved in her death. So she asked him about details from the crime scene. What did Sean tell you about the placement of that memorial?
During the interview, when I had asked him to tell me some things that nobody would know, he said,
I can tell you the truth, because where I found the cross and stuff right now, she wasn't found there. She was found over there by the tree.
He said you put the memorial in the wrong place.
yes. He was right. Nobody would have known that.
With this new information, authorities reopened the Rebecca Lacey case, ruled her death a homicide, and later charged Sean Great with her murder. Detective Major had formed a unique bond with Sean Great. You spent 33 hours with Sean Great.
Yeah, 8 interviews, 33 hours over the course of over a month.
So much so that they've been compared to Clarice Starling and Hannibal Lecter from The Silence of the Lambs.
Starling.
Well, Clarice, have the lambs stopped screaming?
What kind of toll does it take on you?
It may have made me a little more hypersensitive. When the case was going on, our fair kicked off. I get a phone call, and it's a man, and he said, I have your daughter. And I said, who is this? And he won't answer me. And then he hangs up. They contact a guy who made the phone call. It was just a coincidence. The case probably changed how I handled something like that. That was a rough one for me that night.
A month after he's arrested, there's another chilling development. A fellow inmate tells you that Sean Great is targeting you, that he wants to kill you.
He said that Sean Great told him he was trying to find my gun on my body, that he thought it would be the ultimate to kill me.
This information did not lead to any additional charges against Great, but future meetings between Detective Major and Sean Great took place at the jail, where no weapons are allowed. All along, do you think he was plotting to kill you?
I didn't know that initially. I went into a later interview with him. I said, are you still having that hunger that you talk about? Can I ask you something? Will you be honest? Do you still have thoughts?
About that desire?
Yeah.
I'm afraid the desire probably grew when there wasn't no desire at first, but it might have gotten more. Now it's feel like something that I just had to do. I'm feeling it now.
He told you he still had that hunger to kill.
Yes.
Sean Great says he had a hunger to kill. But Jane Doe and the victims' families had a hunger for justice. And now in court, they come face to face with the man they say is a monster. It's April 2018, and Sean Great goes on trial at this courthouse for crimes against 3 of his victims: Jane Doe, Elizabeth Griffith, and Stacy Stanley.
It was the trial that everybody was waiting for. They wanted to know if this community, if these families were going to get justice.
This is not a whodunit case. This is a he did it case. The defendant subsequently, over the course of multiple interviews, confessed to every element of every crime with which he is charged.
I ask that you consider that Sean freely and voluntarily gave information during several interviews which implicated himself in several serious offenses.
Jane Doe comes face to face with her abductor, bravely taking the stand against Sean Great, detailing her horrifying ordeal.
It was probably the most crucial testimony in the case.
How was he choking?
With both hands around my neck.
Did he let go of your neck?
I think when I stopped struggling and fighting, he asked me if I had enough. And I think I just remained motionless, and so he released his hands.
She testified about the terror that she went through during the time that she was kidnapped and sexually assaulted.
At the trial, they played the audio of your interview.
They did.
With Sean.
Yes. I entered the interview room to interview Sean Great. You can hear my heart beating at key times during the interview. Who was that you were talking to on the phone? It made me realize that maybe it affects me physically more than I recognize.
Prosecutors reveal gruesome details about the deaths of 2 of his alleged victims.
People don't understand when you were in that trial, what you see and what you hear, you can't unsee or unhear ever. And those thoughts are always in your mind. You can't forget it.
It was too gruesome. It hurt you that much.
Yeah.
Even talking about it today. Why?
Just what she went through. It wasn't fair.
Sorry.
We, the jury, being duly impaneled, find the defendant, Sean M. Great, guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of the offense of aggravated murder.
Sean Great, guilty on 2 counts of aggravated murder as well as rape and kidnapping. But justice is bittersweet.
He devastated so many people, he changed our lives, and he took away not only Elizabeth's innocence, but the innocence of all of us that believed we were safe.
The day of his sentencing, Sean Great addressed the court.
I ask you, maybe forgive me, find in your heart someday. I know not today, someday. This mess, I'm sorry for all human beings to have to listen, hear this. Okay? I'm sorry. I can't change nothing. Believe me, I would. Not for me, but for you guys.
He asked us in court to forgive him, not for him, but for us. And obviously, I haven't forgave him for what he did.
Real justice would be for you to come with me for about 5 minutes, burn in hell.
The victim impact statements were extremely emotional and very powerful. We heard from Stacy Stanley's son and 2 of her brothers.
It doesn't affect just one person when you kill them, it affects everybody. You ever bury your mother? I had to pick a casket out. I didn't expect that this young.
The offender was found guilty. Any sentence of death by lethal injection shall be imposed on Mr. Great.
At the trial, you had justice for Stacy Balloons.
Yeah.
and Stanley Strong, and you released him when he got the death penalty.
Yes, there was quite a few people that showed up out there to show the support for the family, and that we were glad that he got convicted and received the death penalty. I mean, that was what we were hoping for.
Praise God. In March 2019, Sean Great pleads guilty to the murders of Rebecca Lacey and Candace Cunningham in Richland County. But his first victim remained unidentified.
You are what you eat. So the different things you're exposed to in your environment all show up in your bones. We learned that she likely was from a southern state, somewhere between Texas and Florida.
Then finally, a match.
Now this woman, a victim of serial killer Sean Great, has a face and a name.
In June of 2018, the community of Ashland, Ohio gathered at the site of Jane Doe's frantic 911 call.
Today, that house was finally demolished, bringing closure for residents and relatives of the victims.
Many people felt like they needed to be here today.
After we found out that Elizabeth was one of the people in the house, I would have nightmares about it. And I would see her in the window asking for help. I wanted them to tear it down so bad, and I was so happy the day that they did.
You were there when you saw the house on Covert Court destroyed, demolished.
I was.
What did that feel like?
It was a tangible piece that was destroyed, but the weight of the situation is still here.
2007, the remains of a female.
1 year later, another step forward, a new development in the search for the identity of Great's first known victim.
The preliminary results indicated that the victim was very likely Dana Nicole Lowry of Minden, Louisiana.
So genetic genealogy was able to provide us a family and a potential identity of this person. And what we did next was go down and swab the daughter of Dana. We were able to directly compare the DNA from the daughter to the DNA from the remains to be able to confirm that was Dana Lowry.
Sean Great pleaded guilty to Dana Lowry's murder. So now there are 6 known victims, and only one of them survived, Jane Doe. What would you say to that woman if you were able to talk to her today, to Jane
How
Doe?
brave she was. She saved so many people. If she hadn't been brave and did what she did, we wouldn't have caught him. Then how many more women would have suffered?
Kim Major has retired from the Ashland Police Department, and she now works as the Safety Services Director at Ashland University. And she's written a book about the Sean Great case.
I don't want to forget this case. I don't want anyone to forget it. These women could have been anyone.
You titled the book A Hunger to Kill.
Those are his words. He has a hunger to kill.
Do you think there are other victims out there?
I don't think this is a closed book situation. I think more information may come out.
We never get to say our goodbyes.
As for the Stanley family, they're still dealing with the tremendous pain of losing Stacy. You miss her still?
Oh yeah. It's been 8 years. I haven't even opened a box of anything of hers. I just kind of put it behind like it doesn't exist to an extent.
What keeps you going?
I know she would want us to go on. And the boys. It just breaks my heart to see what they go through every day.
Are you ready, girlfriend?
And you know, like he just had a new baby.
Grandma? You see Grandma?
And he took her out and set her on his mom's bench at the cemetery.
Hello there. Is Grandma?
I talked myself into going out there.
Oh, that was so cute.
She was smiling so big.
It's beautiful.
And that's hard for me to sit and see my daughter never going to beat my mom. Oh, she was a great grandmother to her first granddaughter, and I'm sure she would have loved mine just as much. My mom did not deserve that. Any of the women didn't deserve that.
And even though Sean Great's execution was originally scheduled for 2025, it is currently on hold until Ohio picks an alternative to lethal injection. His appeals have been denied.
He also denied 2020's request for an interview. Meantime, Kim Major's new book about the case, A Hunger to Kill, is available now. That's our program for tonight. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Deborah Roberts.
And I'm David Muir. From all of us here at 2020 and ABC News, good night.